Hello and welcome to World News on TVP World. My name is Anna Kalczyńska. European Union foreign ministers are meeting today to discuss the latest escalation in the Middle East and the situation on Ukraine's front lines. Prior to the meeting, EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas called on everyone to de-escalate tensions in the Middle East. Kallas has called for a return to nuclear talks with Iran, stressing that Tehran must not develop a nuclear weapon. At the meeting in Brussels on Monday, EU foreign ministers will discuss the situation in Iran. Additionally, the Ukrainian foreign minister has also been invited to take part in the EU Foreign Affairs Council. According to Ukraine's foreign ministry, Foreign Minister Andrii Sybiha will brief his European colleagues on the situation on Ukraine's battlefields and notify them about Ukraine's defense needs. The evacuation of Polish citizens from the Middle East has officially concluded, with the last group arriving safely at Warsaw's Chopin airport. The operation, coordinated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, helped nearly 300 Poles return home over the last few days. The final flight, carrying 68 Polish citizens, including 4 children, landed on Sunday evening, marking the end of a massive evacuation effort due to escalating tensions in the region. Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski expressed gratitude for the coordination efforts which brought citizens back from areas affected by the Israel-Iran conflict. While the journey was long and difficult, with delays at border crossings, evacuated citizens expressed immense relief. Sikorski confirmed that the last phase of the operation is complete, ensuring the safety of Polish citizens and other nationals. People living in and around the Iranian capital endured another night of explosions as the country continues to trade missile strikes with Israel. Apart from Tehran, explosions were also heard in Karaj, east of the capital, and in Parchin. Air defenses in Tehran and surrounding towns were activated at around 1 a.m. Central European Time to counter what Iranian news agencies call enemy targets. According to NOR news outlets, Israeli airstrikes hit a large military complex in Parchin, about 60 kilometers southeast of Tehran, and Karaj, less than 50 kilometers from the Iranian capital. Not long afterwards, Israeli officials stated that IDF fighter jets are also attacking military infrastructure in Iran's Kermanshah province. The Israeli military also said it attacked 6 airports in the western, central and eastern parts of Iran. According to Tel Aviv, the strikes damaged runways, underground bunkers, a refueling plane, several fighter jets, and an attack helicopter. The European Union has done everything in its power to prevent escalation of the Iran-Israel conflict, Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski said ahead of the foreign ministers' meeting in Brussels.
We had a good discussion about events in the Middle East. First, I would like to thank European negotiators who tried to prevent the escalation of events in Geneva. And I was assured that the European Union did what it could, which means it told the Iranian side that if it does not stop enriching uranium, it can expect an attack. It was Iran that decided that enriching uranium is more important. Second, I want to tell you that other countries are considering whether to start evacuating their citizens from the Middle East. We have just completed our evacuation efforts. Around midnight, the final plane with our compatriots touched down in Warsaw. This means that about 300 people were evacuated.
Iran's parliament has approved the closing of the Strait of Hormuz, although the final decision will be made by the Supreme National Security Council. The move comes despite Marco Rubio's call on Chinese leaders to urge their Iranian counterparts to keep the trade route open. As a result of the decision, oil futures prices rose by 10% to $78.89 a barrel, which marks the highest rise since January. The waterway, located between Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, is just 21 miles wide and its narrowest point, but it's responsible for 20% of world's oil trade. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, about 20 million barrels of oil travels through the strait each day. If Iran blocks it, global oil prices would spike, and Europe could face energy shortages, especially in countries highly dependent on Middle East fuel. Europe is not the only region threatened by the closure, as China is Iran's biggest oil customer, importing over 1.8 billion barrels per day over the past month. Russia relentlessly attacks Kiev. Last night, the Ukrainian capital saw yet another drone strike targeting multiple areas of the city. Our correspondent Oz Katarji is in the Shevchensky district, where the heaviest damage occurred, and has more.
I am here in the Shevchensky district of Kyiv, where another massive Russian missile and drone attack on the Ukrainian capital has left at least 7 dead, 6 dead here in the Shevchensky district when this apartment building behind me was targeted in a Russian attack. The Ukrainian government says 352 drones and at least 16 missiles were launched onto the territory of Ukraine, including one missile reportedly provided by North Korea. Now, the mayor of Kyiv, Vitaly Klitschko, was on the scene earlier. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
We are seeing the latest consequences of the Russian attack. A destroyed residential building. 5 are already reported dead. We hope that the number of fatalities will not increase. The areas affected by the attack today are Holosivsky, Darnitsky, Sviatoshinsky, Solomansky and Shevchenkivsky districts. Rescue operations are currently underway. We hope the number of fatalities will not increase. To all those affected, please contact the headquarters set up in each of the affected locations. You will receive full information regarding assistance, temporary housing and the mobility fund. We continue working. We hope the number of fatalities will not increase.
Now, search and rescue operations are underway behind me, so that number of dead and injured may rise throughout the day. The inclusion of a North Korean missile has drawn another angry response from the Ukrainian government. This morning, President Zelensky releasing a statement saying everyone in countries next to Russia and Iran and North Korea should think about whether they will be able to protect life there if this coalition of killers persists and continues to spread terror. So another very, very angry response from the Ukrainian government. There are going to be question marks with what's going on in the Middle East right now as to whether the air defense systems which Ukraine is struggling to operate under this relentless Russian bombardment, whether they'll be able to receive the missile defense interceptors that they require for their air defense to protect their civilians from scenes that we're witnessing behind me again in the Ukrainian capital. It's Oz Katarji reporting from Kyiv for TVP World.
Norway will invest $400 million in Ukraine's defense industry, including drone and air defense missiles production. The deal was announced late last night by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky.
Norway's Minister of Defense has visited Ukraine. A decision has been reached to invest $400 million in our production. New funding, primarily for drones. We are working together to create all the necessary conditions to produce air defense systems in Ukraine, jointly with partners, jointly with Norway. Steps in that direction are being taken. An office has already been opened in Ukraine by one of Europe's largest defense companies, Norway's Kongsberg Defense and Aerospace. We are expediting all processes to the maximum extent.
Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez has announced that Spain will be exempt from NATO's 5% GDP target for defense spending. Instead, the country will dedicate 2.1% of its GDP towards defense. The announcement came just a day before the upcoming NATO summit in The Hague, where all member states were expected to pledge 5% of their GDP towards defense spending.
We understand the difficulty of the geopolitical context. We fully respect, of course, the legitimate desire of other countries to increase their investment in defense, if they so wish. But we are not going to do so, and we are not going to do so for three fundamental reasons that I would like to share with you briefly. Firstly, because in our case, 5% of gross domestic product going toward defense spending would be disproportionate and unnecessary. Spain will need to dedicate around 2%, specifically 2.1% of its GDP, to acquire and maintain all the personnel, all the equipment, all the infrastructure requested by the alliance in order to confront these threats with our capabilities.
Many NATO countries have already sharply increased their defense spending. But our guest, Ian McNamara, answers the question of whether this move is due to fear of limited U.S. participation resulting from Donald Trump's administration.
Europeans are spending more on defense than they once were. That's not just down to Donald Trump. That's also because of the threats we face across all four flanks of the alliance, the western flank, the northern flank, the eastern flank for sure, and even in the south. So it's about the wider threat environment as well. And I think with Donald Trump, you're treading a thin needle. You can administer these sharp shocks, and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth earlier this spring as well. But with these sharp shocks, you also eliminating that trust between the United States and Europe as to who is going to come to whose aid. And when that trust gets hated, gets run down, then we are into territory where NATO on a slippery slope towards unraveling.
Poland's Interior Minister says building civil protection shelters is a national priority. A meeting set for next week will address how to allocate funding for the project.
It comes as Russia's war in Ukraine rages on and Poland invests around 5% of GDP in defence spending. Interior Ministry and defence officials will meet to agree on the distribution of 5 billion zloty for local government civil protection schemes. Initially, funds will be spent on the renovation of existing shelters, with the aim of increasing readiness for crisis situations.
22 people have been killed in a terrorist attack against Syrian Christians. The suicide bombing took place during a Sunday liturgy at a Greek Orthodox church in the Syrian capital, Damascus. Authorities say the Islamic State is responsible. Witnesses say that the attacker entered the Mar Elias church in Damascus with a rifle and opened fire before detonating his explosive vest. The resulting death toll is at least 22 killed and 63 wounded. The Syrian Interior Ministry says that the terrorist was affiliated with the Islamic State. This is the first major terror attack in Syria since the rule of Bashar al-Assad was ended in a rebel offensive in December 2024. And that's all in this edition of World News, but please stay tuned to TVP World for more commentaries and other features.